We have new episodes dropping every other week. You can find them early on Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Music, or wherever you find your podcasts, or find the link below for our Megaphone landing page, and we will see you around the campfire.
Hey, I'm Jess,
And I'm Paul.
and welcome to Campfire Ashes. Now gather round, pull up a log, and let me tell you a campfire story. Sean smiled and placed his final shamrock sticker on his trap. Really outdone myself this year, he thought to himself. He and his two younger siblings played along with this tradition every year for their mom's sake. Incredibly proud of her Irish roots, St. Patty's Day was more important to her than most other holidays, so Sean did his best to make her proud every year by crafting the best leprechaun trap he could. He only used new crayons, new construction paper, the expensive stickers with extra gloss coating to make them super shiny in the light, only the best for his trap. And this year, he was going to catch his mom a leprechaun. His brother and sister were thrilled enough with their little chocolate coins and small trinkets left behind when their traps sprang off, but Sean was having none of that this year. After his siblings and parents went to sleep, Sean tiptoed quietly down the stairs to go hide in a laundry basket full of blankets in the living room. From here, he'd have full view of the traps by the front door, and, with his butterfly net in hand, he was determined to catch a leprechaun. As the night dragged on into morning, Sean hadn't realized he'd fallen asleep until he awoke to the sound of someone muttering something under their breath. Damned chocolate coins always melting together in me pockets. Sean rubbed the remaining sleep from his eyes and peeked out the holes of the laundry basket he was sitting in. Before him was a small man, about Sean's height, adorned in a red jacket with matching red pants, gold trim and buttons, a red beard, pointy ears, and black boots. He also wore a crooked red hat with the same gold detailing as the jacket. Puzzled at the sight before him, Sean slowly emerged from his basket, butterfly net at the ready. Aren't you supposed to be wearing green? The small, bearded man, startled, dropped his handful of chocolate coins and gasped. How long you been hiding in there, laddie? Damn near gave me a heart attack. The little man in red took one look at Sean and let out a deep belly laugh. Oh, laddie, did you really think a butterfly net would catch a leprechaun? Oh, that's a delight. I thought leprechauns wore green, Sean asked. Common misconception, dear boy. I think red brings out my eyes anyway. The leprechaun removed his glasses and leaned in closer to Sean when he said this, showing him his honey brown eyes. Besides, do you really think all of us come from the same place? The dress code varies by region and troop, and I am by no means a member of any troop. I am what they call a solitary fairy. The leprechaun pulled out his now empty pockets and checked for any melted chocolate. There was none. Wait, did you just call yourself a fairy? I thought you were a leprechaun. Aye, lad, did your parents teach you nothing? Are you sure you're Irish? The strange little man let out a menacing cackle at this, and with the tip of his hat and a quick spin, he vanished into a whirl of sparkling dust. All that was left behind when the dust cleared was a single cobbled shoe and a note that read, Here, some proof for your mum. Maybe next year you'll catch me. Bewildered, Sean forced his eyes to blink a few times before turning toward the stairs to head up for bed. Either Mum lied or we've been tricked. This sounds like a problem for future Sean.
Aw, that was cute. Nobody died.
Yeah, happy St. Patty's Day, everyone. I went with a more whimsical story because we timed out our schedule and figured out that this story that I would be doing would be falling on St. Patty's Day, so of course I had to do leprechauns. And
Yeah,
I
it
thought,
was.
since leprechauns plagued my tiny existence as a child, I thought I would do something fun and not scary.
Yeah, because I remember those movies. The Leprechaun was not a happy person in the 90s, in the 2000s.
Goddamn Warwick Davis and his beautiful performance.
I love those movies. Those movies are so good.
That's where I first fell in love with Jennifer Aniston, even before Friends.
I keep forgetting that she was in that movie.
Yeah, that was her big break.
That's crazy.
She is one of my favorite actresses to this day.
She does some good performances. I don't think she's my favorite, but she's definitely up there. Like I don't.
One of my favorites.
Yeah, I don't like turn her off if she's like in a movie. Like there's certain people I just can't. Like even before the controversy that was happening, like I hated Ezra Miller. Like
Really?
yeah, I couldn't. Every time he was in a movie, I was just like, I don't like you, and it didn't matter like how nice of a person he was. I was just like, I just don't like you.
I didn't feel that way about him. I can't say I'm shocked, like, with the controversy,
Mm.
but, like, I didn't feel that way.
There aren't too many actors or actresses that are like that, but like he's one of them where it was just like there's something about you. I don't care. I don't believe your performance. Like maybe it's just because like a couple of the characters that he played that I watched early on, he was like very, very annoying, like irritating character. And
Yeah.
I guess I just put that on him. Like it's like, oh yeah, he's that.
You know who I've always hated? And I've had, like, really no basis for why, but I've always hated him in movies enough that I want to turn it off, but I don't. Jared Leto. I
Really?
hate, I hate Jared Leto.
Okay.
My favorite part about Fight Club, and I promise I'm not talking about Fight Club the club, I'm talking about Fight Club the movie,
Because
is
we
when
don't
he
talk
gets the
about Fight
shit beat
Club.
out of him. He gets the shit beat out of him. It's my favorite part of the movie. Edward Norton was a treasure in that movie, and I'm
I like
mad that
I like
he,
Jared
like,
Leto
stopped for a
in
while.
Lord of War.
I never watched that one.
It's a Nick Cage movie. It was actually very
Oh,
very well
good.
done.
I like Nick Cage. I like Nick Cage a lot.
Hmm.
I also haven't watched Morbius yet. I feel like I'd like him in that, but only because not Nick Cage, but Jared Leto. I feel like I'd like him in that only because I feel like the movie itself is like supposed to be bad, and I think that would work.
No, it's not supposed to be bad.
Yeah, you sure? Because
No.
it sounded very much like they did not take themselves seriously when they wrote this.
Oh no, no, they took that movie incredibly serious. No, 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 no. That is the most unintentionally bad movie ever created. It's
Yikes!
so bad.
Yikes!
It's Morbin time.
Yeah, I I was under the impression that they memed themselves.
No,
Wow, that's
no,
unfortunate for them.
no.
Woo,
They
that's unfortunate.
genuinely believe that they put out a great movie,
Oh,
and
come
then
on. Did you
and
watch the
then
trailer?
and then when Sony saw all the things, they assumed that that meant that they liked the movie when we were just been like
No, no,
like
no, no,
mercilessly
no.
trolling the movie, that they
Oh, God.
re-released it to yet a it's the only movie that's ever failed twice.
Wait, it got re-released?
Yes, they thought that the Morbin time thing was a positive because all they saw like Morbius is trending on Twitter, Morbius is trending on TikTok. So obviously people like this movie. Let's release it again and hopefully we can recoup our money, and ended up losing twice
Wow.
because somebody was just like, "Oh, I heard it's on TikTok," and they didn't realize like, "Oh, no, they're mercilessly trolling the movie because it's so
Wow.
bad," and didn't know, and then took a bath twice.
Wow.
But anyway, Leprechauns, because that's not Jared
Back
Leto's
to
fault.
movies that were both funny and terrifying.
Yeah,
Leprechaun.
unless you're talking about Leprechaun in the Hood, then that's just
Oh,
funny.
come on. That's a great movie. I don't even
Oh,
care.
I'm not saying it wasn't a bad movie or a good movie. I'm just saying that like it's it's interesting.
Better than
It's a
Morbius.
yes, Leprechaun in the Hood, better than Morbius.
I think it's better than oh god. Is it Jason X? Is that the one where he goes to space?
Oh, Jason X was so bad.
Yeah, Leprechaun in the Hood is at least good. At least we have
J-
that.
Jason X was spectacularly bad.
I don't want to talk about it.
When they took the two girls and beat them to death inside their their sleeping bags.
Ew.
Like I couldn't stop laughing. Like
This is not what's supposed to happen when you watch a horror movie.
it is absolutely not. You were not supposed to be just like laughing hysterically. But you couldn't help it with Jason X. That was a horrible movie.
I have no words. It's true. It is. It was a bad movie. Back
It
on
was
topic.
so bad.
Back on topic. So leprechauns, if you didn't guess, were the theme.
Mm-hmm.
The Wikipedia definition of leprechaun is a diminutive supernatural being in Irish folklore, classed by as a type of solitary fairy. They're usually depicted as little bearded men wearing a coat and hat who partake in mischief. In later times, they've been depicted as shoemakers who have a hidden pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. So that's, the common, themes that we see when we think of leprechauns, as kids in school. Like I remember being taught, the end of the rainbow is the pot of gold where the leprechaun guards it, and something along the sort of like he's going to give you, kind of like a troll under a bridge, like he's going to give you a riddle, and if you get the riddle right, he'll share some of his gold with you, and if not, then like he disappears.
Mm-hmm.
Something like that.
Yeah, I remember. I remember like as a kid, like trying to get to the end of a rainbow, not realizing that scientifically it was impossible.
Exactly, because
I was just
pot
like,
of gold, and I want to meet a leprechaun and all that fun stuff.
I vividly remember like that's a childhood memory that I can remember about like telling my dad. It was just like, keep driving, we're almost there, and then like a half hour later, why is it so far away still?
Because that's not how science works, bud.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was a kid. I didn't know light refraction back then. That's a high school thing.
The more you know.
Well,
And that's a rainbow too, or is it a shooting star? Both, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Is that not a shooting star that also has a rainbow attached to it?
What? No, what?
The
The more you know. Okay,
Yeah.
I was like, wait, what are you talking about? Comets?
You're like, when did this happen? No,
I'm like,
I promise I
yes,
had a point.
yes. The more you know. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, took me a second. I was like, comet? What? Huh?
No, I'm not trying to get sued, I promise. In more modern forms of leprechaun background, John O'Donovan's supplement to O'Reilly's Irish-English Dictionary defines the leprechaun as a sprite, a pygmy, a fairy of a diminutive size who always carries a purse containing a shilling. And there's several alternative spellings to leprechaun, a lot of which are Irish words that I can't pronounce.
Okay, interesting.
I'm not about to try because I will totally mess that up. But one of them I believe is Laith Brogue, which just means half brogue, because of the frequent portrayal of a leprechaun as working on a single shoe. Because brogues are a type of shoe. So I guess in folk etymology, leprechauns are depicted as cobblers working on only a single shoe.
Okay.
I don't know why it's just a single shoe. That's just how
okay.
I guess it goes to the mischief making and the practical jokes. He's frequently seen as only working on one shoe because his other shoe is usually fine at the time, and he's constantly mending his shoes because he's running around so much that he's wearing them out because he's causing mischief all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I guess is what has to do with it. But also supposedly this is how a human is meant to catch a leprechaun. You wait for him to stop to mend his shoes. And you refuse to release him until he gives you some of his money.
That's a mugging.
Yeah. It's a fun, whimsical way of saying you mugged a tiny man. You mugged a tiny man who had to mend his own shoes for his money. How does that make you feel?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that feels as an adult, I'm like,
This feels wrong.
that's mugging. As a kid, it's just like, oh yeah, you just gotta like wait till he's fixing his shoe and then tackle him and hold him down until he gives you his money. I'm like, that's a bully.
And that goes back to like 1880s folklore.
Okay.
Like back in the 1880s, when I imagine not a lot of people had money. They're like, if you see a tiny man working on his shoes, mug him. The
I'd
family wants
imagine
to mug the man.
I'd imagine that led to some problems.
Yeah.
A lot of
I can
mugging of
imagine.
small people.
I imagine in the 1800s, not a lot of people wanted to be cobblers.
Probably.
Fear
Well,
of
also,
being
like maybe in
mugged.
the 1800s, maybe shoes weren't like as well made, and people were just tackling people for the shoes, and it was more just a matter of like, well, we're just gonna make up this idea that it was a leprechaun instead, not really like I want his shoes.
Okay, that's
I
fair.
don't. I don't
I
know.
I guess it's
I
one way
don't
of
know. That's.
talking yourself out of prison.
I don't think that's what it actually was.
Well, in
Your Honor, it was a leprechaun. It was leprechaun, and I clearly didn't take his shoes. It was. I thought he was a fairy that was going to give me money. Sir, we caught you with several pairs of his shoes in your closet. It's like that's a lie.
that's
That's a
unrelated.
that is something the leprechauns did to get back at me. They put extra shoes to frame me, Your
Well,
Honor.
I mean,
It's like,
if they truly are solitary fairies, they are a form of fairy. I could imagine. Yes,
yeah, could have.
they would trick you and leave a bunch of shoes lying about. Probably just like the left shoe of every pair. That's what I would do.
This could be a left shoe.
But I don't know. I'm left-handed. I would do the left shoe.
You put your left shoe on first.
Yeah, I'm left-handed.
I'm left-handed. I put my right shoe on first.
No, I always do my left.
That's weird.
Slightly
Wait.
related but unrelated, and also, I want to know. Write in and tell us if you guys do this. I need to know if I'm weird. When you're putting on your shoes, do you do sock, shoe, or both socks and then both shoes?
I put sock, shoe.
Oh, God.
Oh no.
You're
I'm the
wrong.
weird. I'm the
Oh,
weird one. I'm the weird one.
well, like, my feet are always cold, so I have to do socks and then shoes.
Okay.
But, yeah, I don't know many people that do sock, shoe.
Am I weird?
Am I weird is the real question. Which one of
Wait.
us is weird? Write in. Let us know.
Wait. I don't
Not
know.
even a listener. Not even our listeners writing in to tell us a story related to their, an experience or story related to leprechauns. Like, no, I need you to write in and let me know how you put on your shoes and
They're
stuff.
just gonna start yelling at me. They're just straight yelling at me. It's like he's a monster. I'm like, but I didn't mean it.
Cancel. Cancel culture. Paul puts his shoes on weird.
I didn't mean it.
So back on topic.
We have been, yeah, we've meandered this one.
Can you tell us the night
We've been doing,
recording?
yeah, we've been doing some meandering.
It's a night recording, as in, I should definitely go take a nap, and Paul has likely just gotten up. So,
Well, I'm almost always have just gotten up.
this is true, but I definitely need a nap. Anyway, back on topic. So, the first recorded instance of the word leprechaun, in the English language, that is, was in a comedy called The Honest Whore, Part 2, written in 1604.
Part 2.
Yes. Part 2, written in 1604. And it's not even the spelling of leprechaun that we're used to. It's spelled lubricant. Yes. You heard that right. It is spelled lubricant. And
Oh,
it says,
okay.
and I quote, "As for your Irish lubricant, that spirit whom by preposterous charms thy lust hath raised in a wrong circle." And that is the first English recording of leprechaun.
Okay.
You're like, I don't know what to say about that.
It just feels like it feels like it's kind of out of place for the idea that what this is going to be. Like,
So there's an they thought that leprechaun, which is like an Anglo-Irish word,
mm,
is derived from Old Irish words that
okay.
are more commonly associated with the Roman festival of Lupercalia, which I believe we've either talked about before related to something I wrote about, or I researched it for something I was going to write and then didn't write. And now I can't remember if I did.
It doesn't sound quite familiar.
Okay, so I probably researched it and then didn't write about it.
It's possible. So we've definitely done that.
Yeah. So if that's the case, I will tell you what that festival is. So Lupercalia is an ancient Roman festival that was originally known as Februa, because it takes place in February. It takes place around Valentine's Day, actually. It stands for purifications or purgings, and essentially it was like a celebration or a feast of sacrificing goats and dogs and like offering, making offerings for fertility. And like priests would go around kissing young women, and supposedly this was like, oh cool, you're gonna get pregnant now. And that was the festival.
Okay.
You're entirely too quiet.
I was just I was
like, did I
just
scare you?
no. It's we've there's some weird traditions when we look up this stuff, and it was just like, really, this is what happens.
Yeah. Like, granted, I'm paraphrasing some of this because a lot of it is like origin and like words and things
Mm-hmm.
that are Greek and Roman and Latin and stuff that I'm not even gonna attempt to pronounce.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it goes back to the cave where tradition held that Romulus and Remus were suckled by the she-wolf Lupa,
Mm-hmm.
and where Romulus was thought to have founded Rome, and the name likely derives from the Latin word lupus, for wolves.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow all of this in Ireland became leprechauns. They're
It feels
all
like
related.
it feels like a
Everything's
stretch.
related.
It feels like a stretch. It's an
It's
odd
all
stretch,
related.
but I mean, like, I'm here for it, but it still feels
It's just
odd.
okay, so like in ancient Rome, right? It's like, oh, we're celebrating the she-wolf Lupa, right? And we're sacrificing goats and dogs, and it's supposed to be a festival of fertility and all that stuff, right? That kind of makes sense. But I
Mm-hmm.
want to know how we got from there to Irish people being like, yeah, leprechauns. That's what that means.
Yeah, there's not really a parallel. There's not really like there's not a trail of breadcrumbs that very neatly
Like,
goes
not seeing the
from
correlation.
yeah, it goes from like wolf mother to small man with cobbler shoes.
But supposedly that's what happened.
I mean, I believe you, but it still feels
Strange.
yes.
I mean, hey, if we want to go back even further than the 1600s, there's a medieval tale known as Fergus MacLeity,
uh
King of Ulster. So in this tale, he falls asleep on the beach and he wakes up to find himself being dragged into the sea by 3 leprechauns. So rather
okay.
than being dragged into the sea, he captures them, and apparently each one of them, despite being a leprechaun, is a genie because they each grant him a wish in exchange for being released.
And that is how Nike was formed.
Oh my god. So yeah, somehow through all of this, leprechauns became little mischief makers that cobble their own shoes and might give you money if you catch them.
Or luck or wishes. But so like I've been talking about this for far too much, but like leprechauns were a pretty big thing in Charmed.
I love Charmed.
Like
I love Charmed.
we made a joke on the React channel that was like, because we've been going through a lot of like 2000s and 90s rock, and for some weird reason a lot of that ended up on Charmed, where it would be like randomly like this band would be playing at P3. It's like, oh, who's this? And it's like, it's Orgy. And it's like, who's this? And it's like other bands. And so like, yeah, so like every time we've been talking about like any band from that era, like I'll bring up Charmed, and he was just like, we're just gonna end up doing a podcast of it, aren't we? And I was just like, I don't have time to do a podcast. He was like, well, now we kind of have to do a podcast. And I was just like, does that mean you're gonna watch Charmed? He was like, I can watch Charmed. And he would like bring up like 4 or 5 different, he would like do like 3 or 4 different things, and I was just like, you realize like everything you're saying is from the first season. Like, did you watch anything past the first season? He was like, I'm sure I did. It's like this, and this, and I'm like, that's all. I don't think he does.
He doesn't know Rose McGowan's character.
No. So, but like he keeps saying like all of this stuff, and it's like everything that you're saying is season 1. Like everything that you're saying.
But Paige was my favorite.
Even
though I love Shannon Doherty, so like, you know, Prue, but
no, Holly was always my favorite. The Piper was my girl. I loved Piper.
That's true. Well, yeah, I mean, looking back, because granted, when I watched Charmed, I was a child.
Mm-hmm.
I was just like, oh, they're very pretty. I like them. I want to be that one. Now, as an adult, I'm like, obviously, Piper is it. Mm-hmm. She's the goat.
And he just like kept pressing, and he was just like, what's the name of the podcast? And I was just like, Third Time's the Charm. And he was just like, oh, that actually sounds good. And I was just like,
copyright. Copyright that now. We're claiming it. And by we, I mean you and Tim, with me occasionally showing up as a guest. Please let me have this.
Look, if there was a possibility of doing it, I would happily do it. But like, I don't know. I don't know when we'd have the time, because
force him to watch the first season with you.
Mm-hmm.
And then we just pre-record a bunch of episodes, and then we put them out.
That is the good thing about that. That is the good thing about that is like you could really like spend a whole day and front load like 6 months of content.
Yeah.
So like we have that going for us, but
I think perhaps that's something we should consider.
Oh God. Oh God, more work.
For now, we can table that. It's funny, you know, like I did title my story, because we title every story, which is usually the episode title of the podcast. Not always, but in case you didn't know that, usually the episode title of the podcast is what we titled our story. And the title of the story is I Thought Leprechauns Were Green, but now at this point it should be that one episode where we couldn't stop going on tangents.
We've had them. We've definitely had those. But anyway,
know, but so bad.
But before I go, like the reason for bringing up Charmed, like leprechauns were in there a lot. Like they were in a lot of episodes of Charmed, especially the later seasons with Rose and all that kind of stuff. And they were always talking about they were more like their goal brought luck. So they were always
this is entirely relevant, because I feel like my fascination with leprechauns started because of Charmed, and then I found the Leprechaun movies, and then I was like, why did I do this to myself? We're coming full circle, really.
Mm-hmm. But like they were really, really cool, and then they got like, kind of irritating towards the end, and I was just like the whole like turning against the Charmed ones and then getting like really kind of annoying. It was just like, I'm fine with them hurting you now. It was just like, that's so mean. But yeah, so like I just remember like that was always they would always say like a magical phrase, and I was just like, did they make that up, or is that actually a thing? Because it sounds Gaelic, it sounds Irish, but like is it Irish or do they just come up with something? Like I always like something that sticks with me, like when we talked about, or like we've talked about like Buffy, because I'm watching the rewatch or listening to the rewatchers,
As you should be.
Morbid podcast. I love them, and
Shout out to them.
they're doing a Buffy series, and rewatching all the Buffys. But like I've watched Buffy like avid, love Buffy the series, and one of the things that I noticed, that we talk, if you listen to some of the behind the scenes kind of stuff, at one point they ran out of demons and they just started making shit up, and like you didn't know what was like actually pulled from lore and what was just like made.
Because they ran out of things.
They ran out of things. So there
But
was
at
like
the
one
same
point there was like a
time-
shark demon, and it was just like, oh, that sounds pretty cool. It was like, no, they made that up on the spot and
But at
like
the same
found it.
time, I love that the amount of thought that they put into it that you didn't know, and you had to look up if this was real or if they made it up.
Hmm.
God, I love good writing.
But yeah, I remember the Leprechauns constantly being a story point and Charmed, especially the later seasons. And they were really, some of them were like really really fun, and then others were always just like, I hate this character.
All right, we've done this enough. It's gone on long enough. Get them out
It's
of
like
here.
it's like please stop with this leprechaun, and then he like dies in the episode, and like, see, I'm fine with him dying.
Exactly. It's like, they ran its course. This is natural.
But yeah, it was, leprechauns are always cool, and it's kind of neat that like they weren't always the thing that we think that they were. It's always
Right,
it's always interesting how literature has shaped some of the things. Like obviously there's something, a story I'm not going to get into for next Christmas and stuff like that, but there's like a story that like we're very familiar with, but we didn't realize that all of our lore is derived from one very basic story. And it was just like, oh, we assumed it was like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years of thing. It was like no, it was literally this one story is the basis for everything that we know about this person. And I'm like,
Well,
huh,
that just broke me.
yeah.
That broke my brain.
Yeah, no, like it's it's a Christmas figure, and it's like everything that we know, all the lore that we attribute to this one thing is this one like story. And it's
A
like
story-
everything.
A story that I guess we'll get to talk about come December.
Yep,
That's
because we will.
exciting.
Because I thought it was a really interesting story, a really interesting thing, and yeah.
You know what else
But
I find
anyway, leprechauns. We
Yeah,
were
you know what
so
else I
off.
find interesting, to segue back into what we're talking about? There is a depiction, a description, I guess, of leprechauns as the sons of an evil spirit or a degenerate fairy that are not wholly good, but they're not wholly evil. So this is where we get the mischief from, where it's like they'll pull little pranks on you, but they're not gonna like kill you.
Mm-hmm. Chaotic neutral.
Yes, which is probably why I like leprechauns so much.
Possible.
I like the mischief. I like the idea that they're derived of fairies, which was something that I learned through this research.
Mm.
But fun things. Prior to the 20th century, leprechauns wore red. They didn't wear green.
Really?
A man named Samuel Lover in 1831 described a leprechaun as, quote, quite a beau in his dress, notwithstanding, for he wears a red square-cut coat, richly laced with gold, and inexpressible of the same cocked hat, shoes, and buckles.
Huh.
End quote. Yes. So prior to the 20th century, they wore red. And according to the amateur folklorist William Butler Yeats, solitary fairies like the leprechaun wear red jackets, whereas trooping fairies wear green. So the idea that leprechauns wear green only applies when they travel in a troop as opposed to by themselves.
See, that's actually stuff that we've learned today.
Yes, that I didn't know.
I didn't know that either. I just assumed everything was like red and Or I just assumed everything was green. So
Right. No. Prior to the 20th century, no. That was not how it works. It was also believed that leprechauns' jackets have 7 rows of buttons with 7 buttons to each row.
okay, that makes sense. That's a fairy thing. Like when you're
Yes.
dealing with
So
numbers and.
back to the fairies.
Mm,
It's also believed that the reason that they wear a cocked hat is because when they're up to anything unusually mischievous, they'll leap onto a wall and do a headstand, like spinning on that hat with their heels in the air.
okay.
I'm like, who, why? Who did this? What did you see? What did you see that you're like, no, this is a thing?
What drugs
Did
were
you
you on?
see someone do that? Because now I'd like to know. Because it sounds like you were writing a story, got stuck, did some coke about it, came back,
Did some coke about it.
you know, the 1800s of it all. And yes,
And this is what you came up with.
yes.
When in
Um,
doubt, cocaine.
yep. They're like, you know what? Leprechauns are about 3 feet high. They got a little red jacket, red pants, gray or black stockings, a cocked hat, and they have an old withered round face. But when they, you know, want to run around and do mischief, they suddenly can break dance and do head spins off a wall. They're doing a head spin off the wall. Like, you know, if you get a screw gun, like the electric
Mm-hmm.
screwdriver, and you get it stuck in the wall and it starts spinning. That's a leprechaun.
Yeah, that's odd.
Yeah, I still want to know where that came from because that's it. Like that's all that it says. There's no further description of, oh yeah, this is why he wrote that. He just wrote that this is a thing that happened. There's also accounts where leprechauns vary by region.
Okay.
So, like, northern leprechauns wear military red coats and white breeches with a broad brimmed, high pointed hat on which he would sometimes stand upside down. So, apparently, in the north, they'd stand on their head but on the ground. Not to be confused with the ones that stand on the wall.
Mm.
There's leprechauns of Tipperary who wore antique slashed jackets of red with peaks all around and a jockey cap. They'd also sport a sword that they'd use as a magic wand.
Yeah, they didn't have
So,
those in Charmed. It was always a stick.
no, it's doubly dangerous. It's like, oh, here's my magic wand. If it doesn't work as a wand, I'm just going to cut you. It's also a sword. Also a sword, so don't fuck with me. Then there's the leprechauns of Kerry, which were fat, pursy little fellows whose jolly round faces rivaled in redness the cutaway jacket that they wear, that always had 7 rows of 7 buttons in each row. So again, the fairy thing with the numbers, but still a red jacket, but
That's so
also a
weird.
red face. And then there's one more that says leprechauns were swallow-tailed evening coats of red with a green vest, white breeches, black stockings, shiny shoes, and, quote, a long cone hat without a brim that they would sometimes use as a weapon. So they wore cone hats, like a dunce cap.
Like gnomes.
Yeah.
Like when
Don't
you see
start.
like
No, that's another story for another day, and I don't want to talk about them.
wait, do you not like gnomes?
No, and I don't want to talk about it.
Wait, what? You don't
We
like
can't talk. We can't talk about it now because I do plan to do it at some point on the pod. But yes. So preview for the time I ever decide to write about this on the pod. I have a very detailed description of why I don't like gnomes that I will write about,
is
and it
it
will be an
just
episode.
like gnomes like or like do you like creep out like when you drive by a house that has like a garden gnome on it?
I don't fucking trust them. Okay. My mom loves them. All right. She loves them. She makes them. I have several in my house, and these ones are very cute, and I trust them because my mom made them, so I know I'm safe.
Uh
The movie Romeo and Juliet slaps. Love that movie.
huh.
Any other depiction of a gnome, including like especially like porcelain or stone garden gnomes, get the fuck out. Get away from me. I don't want it. Burn it. Kill it with fire.
Wow. I was not expecting that. I can't wait for that story now.
Yeah, very traumatic experience with Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, which is also my mom's favorite Disney princess. So thanks for the
I
drama, Mom.
I have so
Because
many
I know you're
questions.
listening.
I have so many questions, and we're not going to get to them tonight. But now I have so many
No,
questions.
you're gonna have to save them for the time I decide to talk about gnomes.
If we ever get
I
to
have
them, because you're
many.
so traumatized about them.
I have many an irrational fear. That's the funniest irrational fear that I have.
Yeah, that's an odd one.
The
I'm not-
second funniest irrational fear that I have is that I die in the shower.
Okay.
The coroner's gonna be called and I'm gonna be naked. That's it. That's why. I'm like, what if I die in the shower? Then I'm naked. Then I'm naked and dead.
You're naked and afraid.
I'm not afraid, I'm dead. Can't be afraid if you're dead. But yeah, so that description sounds like gnomes. It's not. I still don't like gnomes. And that was the first time they mentioned anything about green.
Okay.
It was still a red coat, but it wore a green vest.
Violent pointy hats.
That looked like dunce caps.
Hmm.
It's like a cone head, but much less fun. I like the cone heads.
We are from France. Well, we've meandered enough.
Yeah.
Like,
So
I
back to the relevance. I promise. The modern image of a leprechaun that's sitting on a toadstool and has a red beard and a green hat. The modern image is a more modern invention. That could be explained basically as like far back as 1642 as far as like the English depiction of it.
okay.
Like I know it wasn't really till later on that they started wearing green, but there are certain strands of European folklore as far back as the 1600s that are more like English as opposed to Irish, where they're wearing green. But the hat might have been derived from the style of like outdated fashion that is still common in Ireland, like the hat that we're used to seeing now.
Okay.
That was more common in the 19th century in Ireland. That was also commonly worn by Irish immigrants when they came to the United States.
Okay.
And then the buckle shoes and things like that have their origin from like the Elizabethan period in Ireland. So yeah, lots of different depictions throughout the years of what leprechauns look like and what they are and where they come from. But the one common theme that we get is they come from Ireland. No matter what, people can agree they're from Ireland. I don't know what they look like. I don't know what they are. I don't know what they can and can't do, but they're Irish.
Okay.
So Irish, in fact, that in the politics of the Republic of Ireland, leprechauns have been used to refer to certain aspects of tourism. This can be seen. This is going from Wikipedia. Quote: "This can be seen from this example of John A. Costello addressing people in 1963. He said, quote, for many years, we were afflicted with the miserable trivialities of our tourist advertising. Sometimes it descended to the lowest depths. To this word I don't know how to pronounce, and shillelagh, not to speak of the leprechaun." So I guess what he was saying in 1963 is that tourism was failing so bad because people were talking about leprechauns.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
So in Ireland in the 60s, they're like, hey, don't talk about leprechauns. We want people to visit us.
That's weird that would be like the thing that they didn't want people to go see. I would think that would make people just be like, I want to see a leprechaun.
I know. I guess it was just like people are only coming here for that, so maybe stop talking about it. But at the same time, they were saying that like they were having issues with tourism.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't really know. But yeah, in the 60s, this guy was like, stop it. Stop talking about them.
Just please stop.
Just stop.
Interesting.
Yeah, but I mean, it's clearly still a big
Well,
thing
yeah.
in popular culture. I mean, the Lucky Charms mascot, the Notre Dame mascot,
Mm-hmm.
the
Yeah,
logo of the Boston Celtics,
it's fairly ingrained.
the professional wrestler guy that appeared as Hornswoggle.
Yeah. That was still that was a thing.
Leprechaun that lived under the ring. I know very little about wrestling. That's something I knew.
Yeah, Vince he's got some weird ones.
Oh, really? You don't
There's
say.
definitely some things where it was just like, really, this is what we're doing. Like,
And then, you know, the one I already mentioned at the beginning of this talk, there's the 1993 American horror slasher film Leprechaun
mm-hmm.
and its sequels, where Warwick Davis plays a killer leprechaun. I omitted the plot of those films from my brain. I just know they exist. I can't tell you what happened that he's like, I'm going to kill Jennifer Aniston, but I just know he's a killer leprechaun and he tries to kill Jennifer Aniston and her family.
And then goes into the hood and kills people.
Correct. And I'm sure something else happens in between there. But my brain is like, for your own safety, we're just going to forget this exists. But do you want to know my favorite leprechaun-related story?
Sure.
Hold on, I have to look up the year that it came out before I tell you incorrectly. But I kid you not, every St. Patty's Day. Okay, yeah, it came out in 2001, so it explains it, because my childhood. Every St. Patty's Day since this movie has come out, I sit down and I watch the 2001 smash hit Disney film, The Luck of the Irish.
Which I have no idea what it is. I've never heard of that movie.
You would absolutely love it. It is such a good movie. So essentially, this kid, his name's Kyle, he finds out around, I think it's around St. Patty's Day. If not, it's just like this movie came out around St. Patty's Day, and it centers around being Irish. But he finds out that his mom's side of the family, his mother and her family are leprechauns. Because his family's gold is stolen, so she starts shrinking. And that's how he figures out he's half leprechaun, so he's like turning into a leprechaun, and he has to find the leprechaun that stole his family's gold and get it back.
Interesting.
By playing basketball.
Oh.
It's so good. It's such a good film. You have to watch it. It's so good.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay.
So yes, after, not even after. By the time this recording is released and everybody gets to hear it, like I've probably watched this movie twice that day.
Okay.
It's like it's a DCOM. It's a Disney Channel original movie. It came out in 2001. It's bad, but it's so good. It's such an entertaining film. I love it. You would also love it.
Okay. I got nothing.
I have one more fun leprechaun related story for you, and then I promise to wrap this up.
Okay.
But at least it's related to the topic. I almost wrote specifically based on the lore of the, I don't know. My brain wants to say Crichton because it's spelled like Michael Crichton, but it could be Crichton.
Okay.
Leprechaun, who's also sometimes known as the mobile leprechaun or the Alabama leprechaun.
Okay.
This was one of the first viral videos posted to YouTube.
Oh, I have no idea.
You ready? So it was posted to YouTube on March 17th, 2006. It is a report from... Hold on, I lost the name of the resident. Okay. Crichton resident Nina Thomas Brown submitted a crudely drawn sketch of the supposed leprechaun that was seen in a tree in Crichton or Crichton / Mobile, Alabama in 2006.
I'm assuming it's Crichton.
It's probably Crichton. I just also enjoy saying Crichton in case it's wrong because I'm sure it's bothering someone. I'm kidding. I'm not always here for chaos. But yeah, so it's one of the first
I now have to
viral
find
videos
this.
posted to YouTube. And it received so much attention that like MSNBC saw it, Howard Stern and the New York Times talked about it. Bill O'Reilly talked about it on the O'Reilly Factor.
I need to find this.
The
'Cause
Daily
it-
Show, The
'cause
Daily Show, Key and Peele, South Park, Tosh.0, like a bunch of people talked about it.
Wow. I have not heard of this. I need to go find it now.
Yeah. And the amateur sketch, hilarious. It looks like an acorn with a face.
And that was the
oh wait, hold on. I have to give you my favorite quote from it though, and then for those of you that aren't gonna go find this and watch it, I'm just gonna this is coming from the Wikipedia page for it. It says on March 14th, 2006, local NBC affiliate WPMI-TV was alerted to crowds gathering around Crichton and dispatched reporter Brian Johnson to investigate. Johnson had previously received numerous phone calls about possible leprechaun sightings and questions about it from friends at a barber shop and his church. Things sort of snowballed when the crew arrived, anchor Scott Walker later recalled, with multiple people claiming to have seen a leprechaun in a tree. Crichton resident Nina Thomas Brown submitted a crudely drawn sketch of the supposed leprechaun. Among those who were interviewed was a woman who opined that instead of a leprechaun, quote, it could be a crackhead.
Oh my god.
Another interviewee, DeMarco Morissette, claimed Irish ancestry and showed off a, quote, special leprechaun flute, end quote, that he claimed was thousands of years old. He became known as the Flute Man due to his appearance in the report. I actually saw what was sketched on paper, said Johnson at the time. Some people said it is a shadow from some of the branches being too close and that there's moss on the tree that could explain it. Certainly, I don't believe it's a leprechaun. And that piece aired twice and got so much attention that it went viral, and all of those other people and shows that I mentioned got a hold of it. And somehow, I've never seen it either.
Yeah, I need to search for this now.
I just want to hear this person say it could be a crackhead.
It could be a crackhead.
But as of 2018, that video has over 28 million views, so apparently it's still on YouTube.
Okay.
So there you go, everybody. Happy St. Patty's. Don't go beating up little men for their shoes. I don't condone the mugging. I don't condone the violence. Don't confuse them with gnomes. Gnomes aren't to be trusted. I don't totally hate leprechauns. And go watch that video on YouTube. And go watch Luck of the Irish.
I got nothing.
And remember, last one out douses the fire. If you heard something, no you didn't. And if you're here with us next time, that means you made it to morning.